Before Taylor Sheridan's Yellowstone universe, this HBO show was the best Western on TV. Director and writer Taylor Sheridan struck gold when he created his Yellowstone franchise. But before it existed, one HBO show was the best Western on TV: Deadwood. The Yellowstone universe is an impressive undertaking for television, and with even more upcoming Yellowstone spin-offs, there is a lot to love about what Sheridan is doing for the genre as a whole. The expansive universe has also found a sizable audience over the years, showing just how much potential Westerns still have. Thanks to Yellowstone and the rest of Sheridan's franchise, it feels like the popularity of Westerns, particularly on television, has really taken off. While Yellowstone, 1883, and 1923 are all been strong additions to the genre, there is another Western series that is arguably the best the category has ever seen. Over a decade before Sheridan began his acclaimed universe, HBO's Deadwood was a masterpiece from start to finish. HBO has often been the pinnacle of prestige television, with some of the best shows of all time coming from them, including The Sopranos, The Wire, Game of Thrones, and more. Though it may not get the same recognition as some of the heavy hitters, Deadwood is an HBO classic in every way, running for 3 seasons from 2004 to 2006. Though Deadwood was canceled early, the series eventually received the follow-up film, Deadwood, the movie, in 2019, earning high critical acclaim in the process. Deadwood excelled with its gritty narrative set in South Dakota in the 1870s, with a formidable array of actors that included Timothy Olyphant, Ian McShane, Molly Parker, Jim Beaver, and a plethora of others. Deadwood is a perfect series for fans of the Western genre and is accessible enough to welcome in newcomers. These strengths give it quite a bit in common with Sheridan's Yellowstone and its follow-ups. It's also just one of the best HBO shows of all time. Prestige television is often at the forefront of changing the landscape of television, and Deadwood did just that for Westerns. The genre used to be dominant in the film industry, but it started losing its momentum in the late 60s into the 70s. In the 90s, however, films like Unforgiven led to a small resurgence of Westerns. And then Deadwood brought the gritty, grounded approach to the genre to television, opening the door for numerous Western shows to thrive in the wake of its success. Shows like Godless, Wynonna Earp, Justified, and Yellowstone all have Deadwood to thank for paving the way and allowing a more serious approach to the genre. This is why it thrives on the small screen, even today. While all these shows have been successful in their own right, Deadwood still stands above them as the best. It showed how viable the Western could be on television, even if its popularity in the film industry will never reach the heights of the past. While Yellowstone and the entire universe that Taylor Sheridan has created is a triumphant success, it might not have existed if Deadwood didn't set the standard for what to expect from modern Westerns on television. Though both shows are part of the Western genre, they are different in a lot of ways, as Yellowstone feels a bit more heightened in its conflicts than Deadwood, while still feeling gritty. Still, the success of Deadwood and the artistic merit involved showed that a series like Yellowstone could be possible. Sheridan has essentially perfected the TV shared universe at this point, but a show like Deadwood will always be held in high regard for what it did for the Western genre, not only on television, but as a whole. It's still one of the best Westerns of all time, and an absolute must-watch for fans of the genre. Deadwood will likely forever remain the standard for modern Western TV. Long before John Dutton surveyed his sprawling Montana empire with a cold squint and a loaded rifle, HBO had already staked its claim on the modern Western landscape. Before Yellowstone became the signature brand of neo-Western storytelling, before Taylor Sheridan spun off 1883 and 1923 To fill out the gritty Dutton family saga, there was another Western juggernaut that redefined what the genre could be on television. That show was Deadwood. Premiering in 2004 and running for 3 unforgettable seasons, plus a long-awaited movie finale in 2019. Deadwood was a foul-mouthed, gold-dusted, character-driven masterpiece set in the lawless frontier camp of Deadwood, South Dakota in the 1870s. It was a Western that didn't romanticize the frontier but wallowed in its mud, blood, and moral ambiguity. If Yellowstone is about the modern cowboy trying to preserve his kingdom, Deadwood was about the dirty, slow rise of civilization from chaos, and the corruption and compromise required to build it. Created by David Milch, Deadwood wasn't your traditional Western with clear-cut heroes and villains. It was Shakespeare in spurs, with soliloquies wrapped in profanity and characters that felt more like Greek tragedy archetypes than TV stereotypes. It followed real historical figures, Sheriff Seth Bullock, brothel owner Al Swearingen, Calamity Jane, and Wild Bill Hickok, as they clashed, schemed, drank, and tried to carve meaning and profit out of the Wild West. At the center of the storm was Ian McShane's Al Swearingen, a character so magnetic and monstrous that he made Tony Soprano look like a scout leader. Swearingen owned the Gem Saloon, a hub of vice and violence, and he ruled Deadwood with a mix of brutality, charm, and strategic genius. He was a pimp, a killer, and somehow a man with a vision for the town. McShane's performance was volcanic, with lines so poetically vulgar they became instant legend. Unlike Yellowstone, where moral lines are sometimes clearly drawn, and the Duttons, despite their brutality, are often painted as noble protectors, Deadwood delighted in murky ethics. Sheriff Seth Bullock, played by Timothy Oliphant, was upright but prone to violent outbursts and inner turmoil. His attempts to uphold justice often collided with the harsh reality that law in Deadwood was more a suggestion than a principle. The town itself was the star. Filthy, crowded, and bubbling with desperation, Deadwood wasn't a backdrop. It was a living organism, evolving as the railroad approached and political powers began encroaching. Watching Deadwood was like witnessing the birth of a nation. Not the glorified myth of it, but the real bloody mess of it. There were no clean shootouts at high noon. There were no white hats. There was mud, murder, and monologues about existential despair. Taylor Sheridan's Yellowstone may draw big ratings and deliver satisfying doses of cowboy melodrama, but it also fits neatly into the lineage of cable anti-hero dramas. It owes as much to Sons of Anarchy and Breaking Bad as it does to John Ford's classic westerns. Sheridan brings a political urgency to his scripts, tackling land disputes, indigenous rights, and the encroaching modern world. But Deadwood did it all first, albeit in the 1870s. Milch's writing tackled capitalism, systemic injustice, gentrification, and gender politics in a town that was literally being built from the ground up. And let's not forget the language. Where Yellowstone is blunt, Deadwood was baroque. Milch invented a dialect of 19th century gutter poetry, a blend of highfalutin prose and brutal profanity. Characters would shift from philosophy to threats without skipping a beat. The show turned curses into symphonies. It was often said that the characters in Deadwood didn't speak like real people, but that was the point. They spoke like characters in an epic, trapped in the dirt, but aiming for something transcendent. When it comes to ensemble casts, Deadwood stands tall. Beyond McShane and Oliphant, there was Robin Weggert's heartbreaking, hilarious turn as Calamity Jane. Molly Parker gave the widow Alma Garrett both grace and steel. Dayton Cally, W. Earl Brown, Brad Dourif, and Powers Booth all added layers to the town's volatile ecosystem. Even minor characters left lasting impressions, like Ellsworth's quiet decency or Mr. Wu's pidgin English authority. And yet, despite the critical acclaim, Deadwood was cut short after just 3 seasons due to behind-the-scenes politics and budget concerns. Fans mourned its loss for over a decade, until HBO finally delivered a movie in 2019 to bring some closure. The movie wasn't perfect, but it was a fitting farewell. It reminded viewers that Deadwood wasn't about one plotline or one hero. It was about change, loss, and the price of progress.